Right, guys. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to episode 3 of Let's Talk with Imah, live and exclusive on Al Hikam Media for the moment. Please subscribe to this channel and subscribe to Let's Talk with Imah podcast channel. This is episode 3. We've spoke about the coronavirus. We've spoke about many different topics, subjects within in relation to the lockdown in episode 1. Then we on Saturday spoke about racism, Islamophobia, freedom of speech, and today we are going to be speaking, or tonight we're going to right now be speaking about Muslim revolutionaries. And I'm joined by my usual co-host Didi, and next to him is the one and only, would you believe it, Imam Adil has joined us today, and he will be speaking in his most unique style about some of the great Muslim revolutionaries in the 20th century and the 21st century counting. So let's get started. Let's talk about Muslim revolutionaries. I'm going to just lay down a few important notes and points for everyone to understand. Let's start with revolution. What does revolution mean? You know, from my understanding, revolution is something where it brings about a change, be that in a political aspect, be that in an urban aspect. And we're using this term in urban language, as these are people who brought about a change in the last 100 years, specifically relating to Islam, be that in politics, be that in science and technology, be that in, and that brings a good point I've got in mind, be that in sports, be that in religion. These are Muslim individuals who have had a profound impact on the Muslim world, Muslim society. And that doesn't mean just Bradford or the UK. It's America, it's Africa, it's different continents, the subcontinent. We're going to look at that tonight. But bringing Imam Adil in, what do you suggest? What's your view on the word and the meaning of revolution? When you think of revolution, what do you think? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Honorable and respectable brothers and sisters, viewers of Let's Talk with Imah podcast on the Al Hikam Media YouTube channel. I hope and pray everyone is well. It's a great honor and privilege to be on this podcast with Imah himself and, mashallah, my younger brother Hafiz Asad aka Didi. So Imam Sah's posed a very interesting question in relation to what I consider a revolution. You've touched upon the word positivity, bringing about a positive change. It goes without saying that is one aspect of a revolution, though sometimes it's also in the negative as well. So it's not just positive but also negative impact that it can have, be that within its locality, community, and globally, so on and so forth. But certainly those who bring about positive change, positive impact, they are referred to as the revolutionaries. And I think sometimes it's a bit of a mouthful. It's quite difficult for people to get their heads around this term, revolutionaries, and it's quite rigid. So I think the word that comes to mind, which is a bit more street level, is role models. These are those role models who lead the way, and similarly bring about a positive change within their own area of expertise, like you mentioned, sports, religion, politics, and I know, mashallah, Hafiz Sab's itching to mention a few of these great personalities.
But what's your first, Imam Adil, when the word revolution, you mentioned it just before we went on live, that the first thought that comes to your mind when the word revolution is mentioned was when you was in school, the French Revolution.
Yep. Yeah.
So, when we were studying in school, I think it comes under history. We was taught the French Revolution. So Napoleon, what's his surname?
Bonaparte.
Bonaparte, Bonaparte. Napoleon, this guy who led this revolution, he's glorified in European history, but this guy was a cruel dictator to an extent. Why? Because of the atrocities he did upon the Egyptian people. He tried to take away the identity of those people and the colonialization that they've attempted. So you're right, revolution has a positive connotation and a negative.
Yeah.
As do many words. I mean, this is the language of words. Language, words, this is what it does. So you're absolutely right. Didi, what's your take on revolution? What is revolution in your...
A change. That's what I think about straight away, like a wholesale change. Somebody who's leading it as well. So I always think of a figure that's going to lead a revolution as well. So I think that somebody's always linked to a revolution.
That change isn't just in their lifetime, but it's a lasting change that continues and endures even after their demise.
Somebody who's left a profound impact.
Or legacy.
A legacy.
A legacy, yeah.
So if somebody who leaves a legacy, we can say he would fall under the category of a revolutionist. If somebody doesn't, if I was to look at revolutionaries, let me make this point clear as well. If you was to talk about Muslim revolutionaries from the time of the Prophet ﷺ till now, 1 hour podcast, 1.5 hour podcast will never ever do justice.
The concept is that of a Mujaddid,
a reviver.
Yes.
Though some of the role models we're mentioning today, or we're going to mention now, won't be considered as Mujahideen, revivers, but they had an impact in their continents, in their societies, in their areas. And if we look at revolutionary in terms of there's pioneers. It's immediately a few names are popping up. Like immediately after the Sahaba's time. I mean, even if amongst the Sahaba, if you was to look at somebody who was a revolutionary, I would, and I think you'd agree with me, not having the knowledge and understanding, that Sayyidina Umar bin al-Khattab was a revolutionary.
Definitely.
His conversion to Islam, Umar bin al-Khattab was no joke. This man was somebody who was feared, who was respected, who held himself in high integrity and class.
And ahead of their time. And a visionary.
Completely a visionary. And the immediate story that comes to mind is where... And there is an aspect of divine involved, because he was from those who were the Muhaddathun, if I'm not mistaken, who the angels spoke on his tongue. He was from those within the Ummah. And with Sayyidina Umar, when the 300 companions who were Hufaz of the Quran martyred in the battle of Yamama, if I'm not mistaken, Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq was instructed and told by his council, look, we need to gather the Quran in a book form. He said, look, I'm not going to do something which the Prophet ﷺ didn't do. And Sayyidina Umar said, look, if we don't do this, we're going to lose this knowledge.
Yeah.
So that's a revolutionary step, and a lot of the credit goes to the Quran we read today. He left us his legacy. Sayyidina Uthman's legacy. It was in his time that it was completely compiled.
Yeah.
So this is like a profound impact. And then during his caliphate, the amount of land which was covered and conquered during his rule, Umar bin al-Khattab radiyallahu an, Sayyidina Umar's, it was phenomenal. No Khalifa ever achieved that. So you've got revolutionaries like that. But if we was to talk through the centuries, we'd be talking about Imam Bukhari. He's a revolutionary.
We'll be here all night.
All night.
Yeah.
Certainly you would, because you'd love talking about some of the great sages and the great saints and the great awliya and the great scholars. Ghazali's a legacy even today. Rumi's revival of his poetry amongst young people. People love to read Rumi's poetry on love and thinking that they're in love, and that when they don't understand what Rumi is really saying. He's talking about love with God. He's talking about love with Allah here. He's not talking about love between spouses and people.
And love with the Prophet ﷺ.
Alayhi salatu
I think
wassalam.
within the religious aspect and dimension of this discussion, the core is their relationship with Allah and His Rasul ﷺ. I think that is something we're going to touch upon when looking at the religious figures in the last century or so who were revolutionaries. Core and central to the revolution that they brought about is their deep attachment and connection to Allah and His Rasul sallallahu
Alayhi
alaihi wasallam.
salatu
And that's
wassalam.
a consistent theme from, as you started the discussion, from the Dawr Zamana of the Khulafai Rashidun, bil khusus Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, the name that you mentioned. But all of them have their own legacy.
Yeah,
in
they
their own right.
all left a legacy which
And then
is
those who
untouched.
came after them, I mean, just recently,
Umar bin Abdul Aziz.
7th of Rabiul Akhir marked the Yawm Wisal of Sayyidina Imam Malik, Faqihul Madina.
Malik ibn Anas.
Their legacy is still being felt today. And then yesterday, obviously, the Islamic day begins after Maghrib. So the 9th of Rabiul Akhir was the Yawm Wisal of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. One of the great Imams.
And just echoing what you're saying, like, if you wanted to ever know the legacies of these 4 great Imams, Abu Hanifa, Malik, Ahmad bin Hanbal, and Imam Muhammad ibn Idris al-Shafi'i, majority of the Muslims in the world align to their schools. That's a legacy within itself.
Yeah.
For their schools to have lived through the ages and centuries and time, that's phenomenal, because Dawud al-Ta'i had a school, Sufyan al-Thawri had a school, but their school stopped. And these 4 schools, these 4 men's, their understanding of the religion, I mean, I don't want to go into jurisprudence and the history of and formulation of jurisprudence and the schools. This was their legacy. But moving quickly on to the core of what we want to discuss tonight, which is the legacies and within the last 100 years. So we're talking from 1900s onwards of profound men within politics, within sport, within religion, within different aspects of the community, international community, worldwide community. These people had a profound effect. And Imam Adil is going to, I'm going to give him the daunting task of, in the last 100 years, to look at personalities who've had a profound effect in the subcontinent. So these are huge personalities in the subcontinent that have had a massive impact. Didi is going to look at within the American history, because America is a huge part of the world, though discovered only 400-500 years ago. It's massive, the land of dreams, United States of America. The Muslims in the last 100 years who've had a profound impact. And then on top of that, I'm just going to float around between the two of them. One's my elder brother, he's a year older than me. The other's my younger brother, 4 years younger than me. So I'm always the bone in the kebab. They probably will agree with that.
The kebabs have bones.
Well, that's it. Okay. And then
Bone in the chicken.
In our in our language, adime kebab hai. No?
First time I've heard that one.
First
But
time I've heard that one
we'll
as
go
well.
with what you said. It's your,
That's not
it's
nice,
your
boys.
podcast.
Don't-
It's your
don't-
podcast. We can't really disagree with you.
No, but the whole point is we've got to
Hey?
just be you. You're gonna see Imam Adil in a different light today. We're
I
gonna give him
hope
Imam.
so.
Not
I hope so.
he has a very strict and very
Rigid.
stern demeanor. But believe me, he's a soft guy. Very similar to one of the great men who in the last 5 to 10 years has had a profound impact. They all have this image and persona, but really they are soft, gentle people, good characters. And Imam Adil is no different to that. With me, it's a bit different. I'm just as it is. And a lot of people don't actually like that, being an imam and being as relaxed as I am. But that's just the way we are. And Didi, well, he's just Didi, isn't he? Everyone has this campaign for the last 2 episodes.
I've just been
Everyone's
informed it's kebab mein haddi.
kebab mein handi hai. So imagine you're biting a kebab, and then
there
you've
was
got a
something
bone
about it.
inside there.
We've got somebody who's verified it for
So
us.
and that bone always causes a problem, because if you bite the bone, you're gonna have a problem.
To be fair, I might say this with a few quotes in the past where me and you are just being bemused. But it's
Gee.
been proven right as well.
Gee.
But it is, there you go. See, I'm glad he
To be
agrees.
fair,
Normally he's shooting us down, but today he's actually backing us. So
He's-
not a problem.
He's on his best behavior tonight, mashallah.
Anyhow, so if we was to start with Didi now, and in the last 100 years, we're talking about personalities. So I'm going to drop a few names. Malcolm X. We're going to talk about Muhammad Ali. These are 2 within the last 100 years. And then we've got others as well who have had a profound impact on the Muslim world or the affairs of Muslims there. What do you say about that?
personally, I chose to speak about obviously Muhammad Ali being the revolutionary figure that he was in the 20th century. Obviously born in 1942 January the 17th, died on June the 13th in 2016. Everyone, obviously, he's known primarily as a boxer, but he was more than that. And when Imah did ask me what I think a revolution is, I did say normally I have a figure that's connotated with the revolution. So Muhammad Ali, why I chose him is because he just stood for what he believed in, and he was very, very firm in what he believed in. Obviously, starting his career as a boxer, he went on to win the Olympics in the face of racism. He went to represent America. He came back realizing that even though he's the world champion representing that country, he was still not getting served in the same campaign.
And bear in mind, I'm going to interrupt here and there just to add a few into there. I mean, it's quite normal me interrupting on the podcast, but bearing in mind that Muhammad Ali was not a Muslim at this point.
Yeah, he wasn't.
We've got to mention that he was not a Muslim. He was a black lad from Louisiana,
Kentucky,
and he was just growing up. Blacks didn't have the rights even. At that point,
he didn't know
that many,
even till
today
now,
there is institutional racism going on in America against black people, and then going to the Olympics and continuing.
When he fought Sonny Liston, he's won the title now.
I think he was 22 at the time.
He was 22 at the time. Yeah, I was going to say at the time the world's youngest heavyweight champion.
Imam Adil knows a bit about Ali
until Mike Tyson broke the record.
I'll let you into a secret. I was doing a bit of watching of a few documentaries during the afternoon.
Oh, nice,
just after teaching class. So the Malcolm X documentary, about 15-20 minutes on YouTube, covering their life, and the same as Imam Hafiz Asad mentioned, Muhammad Ali as well. So I thought I'll just drop that little bit in. Good.
You're getting used to podcasts, Imam Adil. Actually quite good at this.
He was 22 when he won the World Heavyweight Championship, and he was obviously the youngest champion ever until Mike Tyson broke the record in 1990. 1986, sorry, pardon me. And when Muhammad Ali's won it, what I found most profound and amazing was the timing of his announcement that he's chosen now, once he's won the World Heavyweight Champion. That's a big thing. He's got the crown now, he's got the belt, and now he's telling everyone I'm a Muslim. He came out, he announced it, he said I'm a Muslim, my name's not Cassius Clay no more. He changed his name then to Muhammad Ali, or Muhammad Ali as we would say.
And just the choice of those names, Muhammad,
just so powerful,
and Ali, two of the most, Sayyidina Rasulullah there's no equal to, and Sayyidina Ali holds a rank which amongst the companions that nobody holds. There's certain ranks and status and virtues he has that others don't share in with him. Ali minni wa ana min Ali. Ali is from me and I. And for him to then look how Allah takes work from, he took work from a man who named himself of all the names Muhammad Ali.
So Hafsa, where did he take that name from? Where did he get it from? What was his inspiration for that?
To be honest, the leader of Nation of Islam, now we're going to get into another one now. Obviously, he joined the Nation of Islam originally, which was
the most powerful Muslim rights movement at that time in America.
But it can be argued, was it a religious movement or was it more of a race political movement?
Obviously. Just black.
And their belief was that the white man's the devil. That was Elijah Muhammad's belief. And obviously he had the belief which is kufr, that he's a prophet after the prophet.
Yes, and of course Nation of Islam are not Muslims.
And interesting, a lot of people don't know that. They assume that the last false prophet was Mirza Ghulam Qadian from the Indian subcontinent.
Yes.
But Elijah Muhammad, Nation of Islam founder and leader, made this false claim. Yes. And when we have these discussions in class, a lot of people are oblivious to that. So these type of discussions are, I feel, very beneficial for our young viewing audience, for their own izafat in ilm, increasing their knowledge, and it's something which again goes back to our introduction, that when you've got this discussion in regards to revolutionaries, you've got those who bring about a positive change and those who contribute towards the
negative change.
Negative effects within society. So this was somebody who was influential in bringing in Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X towards Islam, or he was a part of that. And essentially we know, and something I want to mention before I forget, is that both of them became orthodox Sunni Muslims.
They denounced Nation of Islam.
Yeah.
And when they realized, I'm going to fast track just a little bit, when they went to Hajj and they realized that the world Muslims have no alliances just to black. Islam is not black. Islam is a multicultural religion.
Diverse.
Just to keep it
Diversity
factual,
is-
is Malcolm X who became Sunni first, and then he was trying to convince Muhammad Ali at the
Okay.
time. He
Yeah.
got assassinated whilst he was trying to convince Muhammad Ali.
in 1965.
Yeah. And then Muhammad Ali became Orthodox Sunni in 1975.
And we know that he's got profound link with, Sheikh Nazim
Sheikh Nazim, yeah,
al-Haqqani
he did better
Another
than
great
them as well, yeah.
revolutionary.
of the 20th century.
Yeah,
This man
Without
had
doubt.
his speech at Wembley, was it? I think it was in Wembley in English. He does about the Prophet alayhi salatu was salam, and because he had command of the English language, he was spiritually connected on another level. Sheikh Abdullah Daghestani from Syria. This was his murshid. This was his guide, and then now his legacy continues through his khulafa, primarily Sheikh Hisham al-Kabani. May Allah give him a long life. Who we know really well. I know very well. I've sat with in the company of. This was Sheikh Nazim rahmatullah alayhi of Cyprus, of Turkish roots. Who has links to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Muhammad Ali sat there in the presence of Sheikh Nazim, and that's phenomenal, and that tells you, Sheikh Nazim is a figure of the 20th century who's had a huge impact in Europe, in the Middle East,
In America.
especially
It also
in the
shows
Western
the side
world.
of
the UK.
spirituality as well.
Yeah.
That obviously is accepted by.
It's quite interesting that there's a deep connection between Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali and Sheikh Nazim and all these great revolutionaries who we're discussing tonight on this podcast. There is some sort of direct or indirect link and connection. And that comes about through tasawwuf, that comes about through spirituality. And again, I made this point yesterday, and I know not everyone agrees with my points, even with behind the camera. But it's interesting, again, and it's an open challenge, though I'm not here to do any munazirah tonight, but it's an open challenge that all of them have a link to Sunni Islam.
Yeah.
All of them have a link to
Absolutely.
Sunni Islam.
We don't disagree with that, Imam Adil. That is for, without a shadow of a doubt. You see, a person can live his life in misguidance. He could be deviant. But eventually, when Muhammad Ali became, suppose he accepted Islam on the hands of somebody who claims to be a prophet.
Yep.
But then the light hit him when he sat with Sheikh Nazim, when he sat with the righteous scholars. The light hit his heart and he realized Mike Tyson's a Muslim.
Yeah.
Iron Mike, who's got a big fight coming up, his return on the 28th of November
I don't
against
think it's
Roy
much
Jones.
of a fight. I've read today that they can't do any knockouts.
Well, I
2-minute rounds.
think he's gonna drop it.
If anyone's cut, then they're gonna have to cancel the fight. There's no referee. Judges,
They are
is it?
in their 50s, aren't
Referees?
they?
Roy Jones is not happy. I was watching his podcast, and
But it's all about the money, I suppose. And
always about the money.
And
yeah.
charity.
It's
He's
all
doing it
going
for
to
a good
charity.
cause.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's a charitable event, so
Mike
he's doing it
Tyson
for
did
a
say it's all
good
going there.
cause.
all right, good.
But
good.
but back to where we are. I mean, these guys they've had a profound connection and effect towards and link between themselves. So whether it's Sheikh Nazim and all these guys, there's a link.
Certainly, the revolutionaries in the West.
Yes.
I do feel sometimes the revolutionaries that we're going to refer to in the Indian subcontinent, they are slightly alienated from those who are in the West and vice versa.
In the East. But
yeah.
we see the world is West and East. Though it's
Yeah, yeah.
global now, there was always the Mashriq and Maghrib. You see, there's a reason why the world has these directions. Junub and Shimal and Maghrib and Mashriq and East and West and North and South. And, you're known by, I'm from the North. He's from the South. He's from the East. He's from the West.
But again,
So we're sort of aligned. Though we are all from...
But again, this particular discussion transcends that.
Yes.
Regardless of whether you're from the north, south, east, or west, if you meet the criteria, if you tick the boxes, then no, and you're that individual, like you mentioned earlier, who brings about that positive
I
change,
think this is what revolution is, Imam.
then that is essentially the criteria and the
He
benchmark.
will outgrow,
Yeah,
direction.
Also, revolution
He
is
will-
bringing people together as well. So,
You know,
a very valid point.
Bringing and coming back to Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X,
Yep.
if you was asked this question, what was their legacy? What was Ali's legacy? We know he was a 3-time world champion. Now, 3-time world champion, what does that mean? Understand that means that he won, lost again, and
Sorry,
won.
I think the title was stripped off him once as well.
Yep, it was, yeah.
Because of
it
that
didn't
was
serve
the one
political
point,
views.
That was the main point I was going to come
Yeah.
to. That after he's won the title against Sunni List, and obviously he's carried on his career. Now he's in the peak of his career. Muhammad Ali was the greatest boxer of all time, hands down. That's an open challenge for me now.
I don't know. I think the guys who are a bit Floyd Mayweather, the
No
best
chance.
ever TBE,
No chance.
they'll argue. Roy Jones,
No.
Robert Duran.
Muhammad Ali was a
Roberto Duran,
heavyweight
these
who
guys
could
were
move
big.
like a middleweight. He could float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. He transcended sport. His legacy was that, look, he started rap music inadvertently. He was actually the originator of trash talking, mind games, psychology with the opponent. Ali brought all this into sports, charisma. He's the birth of the modern superstars, Muhammad Ali.
He epitomizes that.
He was the birth of Imam. He's the first.
I think Hafsab, it'd be fitting to say here about Ali in the sporting sense and in worldly sense that prior to him, there was no personality from we don't mention no 18th century. I think it starts from Ali as
Yeah.
this
Very true, yeah.
this big timer. He triggered the Jordans. He triggered
That a
the
sports star
Messi.
can be bigger than.
He triggered Diego Armando Maradona, who we've lost. And tomorrow, guys, I'm going to pitch it here. We've got a podcast live at 9 p.m. I've got
Maradona's
the
greatest
Bradford's
one.
Diego Maradona, who will be coming on, a good friend of ours, Ibrahim, and we're gonna talk about Maradona and football and what is it that makes Maradona probably the greatest footballing ability footballer. He splits opinions because of his coke addictions and whatnot. But as a footballer, I'm gonna argue that he's probably the greatest footballer that's kicked up, kicked the ball. And there's a lot of young lads who will disagree. A lot of elders might say Pele, but we'll leave that till tomorrow. But we're saying that Ali was that man who,
Yeah.
when you go back in history, you might argue Al Capone, he's glorified and whatnot, but in terms of sporting reasons, he's a name that, which football started in the 1800s.
Do you feel, either of you, that there is someone who's maybe reached that level after him?
No one will.
Or will
No,
we see
not
someone,
Ali.
No one
someone
will.
as great as Ali after him?
No one will in sports.
Islam
Period.
or out of Islam sports, or within without sports?
Within sports, period, nobody's going to be bigger than that guy.
When you mentioned Jordan, you talk a lot about him.
He
I
is
think
one of my heroes.
that
Michael Jordan,
documentary that
inspiration,
you
yeah.
do
Yeah,
watching,
The Last Dance.
The
I
Last
keep coming
Dance.
to your house to watch because my Netflix won't work.
I don't know. Jordan, I've got a story, yeah, on The Last Dance that I heard from The Last Dance, where obviously Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls team was the most followed team in the whole world. They were rock stars. And there's a moment where a reporter's reporting on Michael Jordan, and he's tugging at Scottie Pippen saying, look who's walking past. He goes, it's the only ever time I see Michael Jordan in awe of somebody else. He goes, who was the person who walked past? Muhammad Ali.
So I think that's a key word. You're using the key buzzwords, which I always look out for in a conversation. I think revolutionaries are those individuals that you're in awe of, either during your lifetime, or nobody's seen from us three. We haven't seen Diego play.
Yeah.
But you're saying Diego's the greatest. But we've never seen him play. Like, we watched a few
Clips on YouTube and-
montages on YouTube, etc.
and
So I think it's
reels.
certainly somebody that if you've been in direct contact with, you're in awe of them.
Yep.
Or if you've heard of them, you know of them,
Also, I think it's someone
they have that profound impact on you.
who's got the ability to do something that you can't do, but you want to do as well.
Yeah.
He's doing what you want to do. He's projecting.
role model.
Yeah,
They're
he's a role model.
inspiring you to
Yeah.
become.
And they're motivating you. I mean, Muhammad Ali's life, without
And
a shadow of doubt,
The main point
means a
that we hit
motivation.
on here on his life was when in 1965, when the Vietnam War, when they were drafting for the Vietnam War, they asked him to step forward and be drafted. Outright, he point blank, there's a video where he just says no. And they call his name again, and he refuses to move forward again. And they call his name for the third time and say, you need to be drafted into the American army or you're going to face imprisonment for 3 years. Now that's where the talking stops and the walking starts. It's easy to stand at a mic with the status of Muhammad Ali being the world champion and saying, yeah, I'll give everything up if it came to it.
Which he did.
And that's what's so amazing.
They
There's
didn't
so many
just
that we
talk the
see.
talk.
Exactly. There's so many that we see that talk the talk in our everyday lives.
But they can't give up their belief.
This guy gave up millions of pounds. He gave
He
up
gave,
his career.
everything, but he didn't give up what he believed in.
Why? Because he said they've never called me the N-word. He said, my religion doesn't believe in going to kill innocent people who have not killed me for no reason. And then refusing to be drafted in the American army, like the greatest army the world's ever seen, they say all the time. The biggest country the world's ever seen, this guy's standing up to them. He wasn't just standing up to anyone, he was standing up to the American government. And in standing up for them, there was all the hippie movement, the anti-Vietnam War movement that was going on. They took him to be the role model. He started going around colleges.
He set the bar. He was the yardstick.
From a boxer, he became the greatest orator I've ever heard. I'm just going to say that. The greatest speaker I've ever heard. He was dyslexic as well. I'll throw that out there.
Really?
Yeah, he couldn't read or write. He came 395th out of 400 in his class. He was the 5th dumbest child in the class, you can say. But if you hear this guy speak and how he articulates about Islam as well in some of his interviews with Parkinson.
Wow. I mean,
he's
the best you'll ever
I'm not
see.
gonna lie. Young guys, I don't know if Joe can get this up as well. And we can listen to this. The way Ali explained the Aqidah and of Tawheed.
The existence of
No
God.
Maulvi's ever done that.
I've never heard a Maulana explained that way, like that.
Very profound.
God gave him that ability.
And this is when you are deficient in one aspect, you will become efficient in another.
Subhanallah.
So if he was dyslexic, he couldn't read and write. But I tell you what, he was profound in speaking.
Definitely.
And
This
he
man
used to
was
say
a
all
phenomenal
this
speaker.
as the champion. It wasn't like, I'm not world champion no more. I'm still the world champion. I'm a Muslim. I'm in your face. What are you going to do about it? And that's how we need to sometimes be.
That mindset.
That's it,
remained
yeah.
consistent.
It wasn't an apologetic mindset.
No,
there
way.
was no apologeticism involved in this where, but we're sorry. No, it was, this is who I am. This is
Either
what I stand
accept
for.
it.
Boom.
And the greatest impact he had was that the whites started following him. The black people started following him. Muslims are following him. Non-Muslims are following him. Jews are following him. Christians. Just everyone started following this man.
So revolutionaries break boundaries.
That's it.
That's what we're saying.
Yes.
They transcend skin color. They transcend continents.
Religions, regions,
They are those
continents,
individuals who
directions.
inspire individuals across the board.
It's just that pride in it. Like, he's a Muslim. Like, the greatest
That's
sporting
what
superstar
that's
figure
where
ever.
And greater to that, he's a Sunni Muslim.
Yeah, he's a Sunni Muslim. Like, the Beatles were the greatest rock stars ever, probably. And at height of their fame, they came to watch him train. Arnold Schwarzenegger used to go into the gym to watch him train. That this guy was something else.
he
Donald Trump
inspired.
said,
So we should be proud of that.
Yeah.
We're proud of the fact that he is a part of our beautiful religion. He has two of the most beautiful names, Muhammad Ali, and he is somebody who remained true to his principles.
Yeah.
He will remain true to the core. And he was somebody who epitomizes our discussion today, which is
And this is a Muslim who
revolutionary.
transcended sport.
Yeah.
Today we have the Khabibs, we have the Ozils, we have the Pogbas, we have other, prolific Muslim sportsmen. But Ali is the.
I think they're a bit sporadic.
Another impact of Ali is that he's always mentioned politically now as well as the face of the original, Black Lives Matter movement, you can say, of the 60s, the 70s with Martin Luther King.
I know that Martin Luther King that name will prop up.
Malcolm X,
but
obviously.
in terms of Malcolm X, which is going to bring me to that point where Malik Shabazz, born in 1925, from Boston, this guy was, he was imprisoned. He used to commit a lot of crime inside there. He reverted on the hands of Nations of Islam and then came out and, he used to read books. He memorized the entire dictionary by heart because he was a phenomenal speaker. He was able to articulate and deliver. And that delivery is what turned hearts. And just under him, for Nation of Islam, 500,000 people came to that Nation of Islam movement. Just on his speeches. And we're talking in an era of no social media.
Yeah. I think that's what led to a lot of fear from Elijah Muhammad, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And that's when obviously the downward slide began.
And then he outgrew. He was bigger because as a political figure, for him it was all blacks. The N word could not be used. This guy stood up. He knew Ali because he was black. He was the political voice piece. He was the voice of the black man with Martin Luther King and the others. This guy was, and he was powerful. He was garnering a lot of attention. He was getting a lot of eyes on him. A lot of people. He were moving things. He were making things happen in America for the black man. But there were people watching and they didn't like what he was doing.
FBI, CIA.
And then in 1965, just before his assassination, he didn't die. They assassinated him. They took him out of the game. Why?
I think 3 people from Nation of Islam, they were charged with his murder. I think,
Yeah,
obviously.
there was Nation of Islam's name popped up into this, you know, and others within. They're saying the government. There were people. Look, they had to take this guy out. He was too powerful for him. And Muhammad Ali was inspired by the likes of Malcolm X, and he wasn't known. His actual name was Malcolm Little.
Yeah.
And then he changed it when he came to Nation of Islam to Malcolm X. And then he changed it from there when he became a Muslim to Malik al-Shabazz. Malik al-Shabazz. And he went to Hajj. When he went Hajj, he seen a white man in dressed in the 2 pieces of white clothing, 2 pieces of cloth. He's seen a black man, he's seen a yellow man, he's seen a Chinese, he's seen all people around.
It reminds me of the famous statement of the Prophet sallallahu at the farewell Hajj, that no Arab is superior to a non-Arab.
Over an Arab, yeah.
And no non-Arab is superior to an Arab, and similarly, no white to a black and no black to a white.
And when he's seen that, when he
and his eyes were open,
and I just wanna look. I want you guys to all pay attention to this. This is an interview of Ali that Parkinson here in England did in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. He's going to put it on now, and we're gonna look at this, and I want you to just listen to how Ali explains his belief in God.
There's 4 interviews that he did with.
You don't hide from your public. You walk around, you talk to people, you meet people. That's right. Have you ever thought about being assassinated?
Didn't I read your mind?
You did.
See? If I get shot or something happened to me, it'd have to be because somebody don't like me for what I believe and represent things.
Yes, sir.
And I'd die for them.
You would.
And let me tell you, if somebody want to get you, see, in the Holy Quran, the Islamic Bible, it says, not one soul comes on earth without the permission of Allah, God. Not one soul leaves without the permission. When you die, it's time. So I don't believe that it's time for me to die in that way. If it is, then I welcome it. If it happens, it happens. It's God's will.
Do you have a bodyguard? Do you have?
No.
You don't?
I got one bodyguard. He has no eyes, though he sees. He has no ears, though he hears. He remembers everything with the aid of mind and memory. When he wishes to create a thing, he just orders it to be, and it comes into existence. But this order is not conveyed in words, which takes a tongue to formulate, or which sound carries ears. He hears the secrets of those under quiet thoughts. That's God, Allah. He's my bodyguard. He's your bodyguard. He's the supreme.
Wow. I mean, this is Muhammad Ali who is explaining when he's asked by Parkinson, who is your bodyguard? Do you have any bodyguards? And he counts on, and this is just so sharp and so present in conversation and so quick-witted that he says 7, 8, 6. I don't have anyone. I only have one. He sees, yet he has no eyes. He hears, yet he has no ears. You know, he hears, yet he has no ears. I mean, that is balagha at its peak. You know, in the English
eloquent
language, the eloquence in his dialogue and his delivery. This is what made him. This is what transcended him. He was an orator. He was a formidable orator. Not only that, he was a political. He was an activist. He stood up for rights.
He was a force of nature as a man.
You know,
He's
this
just
guy.
a force of nature.
He was.
Our subs on fire today.
But he's prepared.
Yeah, I can tell he's researched well.
And
I like that. He's a force of nature.
In year
amongst
11,
men.
for my GCSE speaking and listening, I did a speech on Muhammad Ali. I got A star.
Acha.
He's been my hero since I was a kid, man. I won't lie.
And I remember Mr. Bartliff. He gave me Ali's.
I read that. Yeah, the butterfly
you
book.
read that couple of years ago.
I never read it, but
I read it.
It came to some use that Didi read it, and
I think you just watched the film Will Smith one, huh?
I just and to be honest with you, I'll pick up just watching things in that sense is quite. But you know, this guy he's explaining his belief in Allah, what we call Tawheed. You know, Aqidah to Tawheed, and our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His oneness. You know, we teach Aqidah Tahawiyah, we teach Aqidah Sanusiyah, we teach all these books of Aqaid, Jawharatul Tawheed, and all these books. And Ali here, in a few words, is summarizing what we're believing here. And this tells you his profound understanding of God, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which a lot of young people today, you know, atheism is on the rise, and we will talk about this one day as well on a podcast. And you need to just listen to something like this and realize if somebody as prolific as Ali is submitting to the oneness and greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then how can you walk away thinking, I don't believe in God, he doesn't do anything for me?
I think he won the BBC Sports Personality
of the century.
Yeah, and which year was that in?
99, and he came number 2 in North America's poll. I don't know why Babe Ruth beat him to that, but
all right.
I think that's because of baseball being
big in America,
the main American sport.
A lot bigger, yeah.
But I mean, Muhammad Ali,
and again, a great achievement for Muslims, for Islam, a great.
He's an ambassador of our deen. He was an ambassador, representative of our religion.
On the Walk of Fame, very famously, he's the only one that's on the Wall of Fame.
Yeah.
Because he
says that name. This is a name that is not befitting to be on the feet, beneath the feet of people.
Look at that.
I mean, this guy respected the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, the name of Sayyidina Ali. You know, more probably than we as Pakistanis who think we have control over this religion, because we have, you know, we are the recipients of Islam, and you know, Islam is Pakistan. No, it's beyond that. Islam is the religion of the world. This is it's a global religion. It's a religion for everyone. All you have to do is submit to the oneness of Allah and the belief in Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then act upon what they taught.
I think these two revolutionaries epitomize that. This
Malik al-Shabazz.
Yeah, this statement that you just mentioned now, they epitomize that. Essentially, they're those individuals who give us the true impression of Islam, the true meaning of Islam. And that's what revolutionaries do. And they're not individuals who are cocooned in their own kind of village politics.
True.
Or they're not, they see the bigger picture. They see the bigger picture. They're not horse with blinkers on. They see the bigger picture, and they certainly have a profound impact in their lifetimes, and then an impact in those who come after them as well. You know, for us, it's a great honor to be sitting here and speaking about the great Muhammad Ali, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, and Malik Shabazz, aka Malcolm X, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh. They were great individuals who pioneered true Islam and the true meaning of Islam in their times, and we make dua that Allah Almighty elevate their darajat.
And then, you know, when we move from Ali and Malcolm X, these guys were more in sports and politics and stuff, and we come towards, you know, the religious impact. You know, Sheikh Nazim is a name which I think stands out in the last 50, 60, 70 years, being in that position where he had an influence over such you know, personalities and superstars in the West, and then
a figurehead. And
then when we move from the West, when you come to the UK, we've got. I mean, I'm gonna be really honest. I've not seen anyone who within the UK sporting field or political field have the impact as Ali and Malik Shabazz had. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, to my understanding and knowledge, I've not seen someone in the last 100 years.
I think on a smaller scale, really smaller, Amir Khan breaking through for Pakistanis on a
for Pakistanis, yes.
That's
but
what
we're
I meant,
talking. He's a Muslim, yes, no doubt. Amir Khan, good friend of ours. We know him really well. You know, mashallah, I know his family really well. You know, his mother, his father, Uncle Shah, his brother Harry is a very good friend of mine. You know, and he has, in the last 10, 15 years, as a Muslim boxer, he's broke the taboo. This is the Muslim. When you talk about Muslim boxers, who's the first name?
He's the only
Amir Khan.
Yeah, at that moment.
You know, you've got when he came to Baki Masjid, it was the year of the Olympics.
2012, just before I left here.
He actually filled out that masjid from top to bottom. That was his peak.
And he came actually as an ambassador of Great Britain, the Great British team. And we invited him, Ash invited him to the masjid, and I was the Imam at that time. So I was 22 at the time, and I think Amir was 24 at the time. Okay. He's a year or 2 years older than me, if I'm not mistaken. I think maybe a bit more. He's 33 now, yeah. So he's about 3 years older than me. So he was about 24, and I've got a picture with him as well at that time. Me as the young Imam, and he as the young boxer. But he came at that time, and we're talking Muslim. Not necessarily, we're not talking about here. How much Salah did Ali pray? How much did Malcolm X pray?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Allah knows.
And this is between them and Allah. It's not our job to judge them on their prayers or their hajj or any. And likewise, we shouldn't do that with Amir Khan or anything. Yes, when it comes to defending the rights and speaking and being vocal, I think very few would be untouched to the level of Ali and X and these guys. And Ozil recently has been quite vocal.
Well, I was making this point earlier. I mean, they're quite sporadic, if you ask me. I'm not a pessimist, though I often get labelled with that term. I'm more of a realist. And with Ozil, I've seen that, yes, he's very genuine, very sincere.
Helps a lot of poor
and
people.
He's pretty much put his career on the line with his defense of the Uyghur Muslims in China. And salute to him. Allah bless him and preserve him for that. But the reality is that a lot of these Muslims within the sporting field, i.e. the Pogbas and the Ozils. I mean, Pogba's example comes to mind. Just after the caricatures in France, there was an article in the Sun newspaper.
A false article.
A false article. I was thinking at the time that if he had just actually said something positively and actually gone about defending the honor of the Prophet ﷺ, at that point, he would have had a more profound impact. But rather than taking that step forward, he slightly backed off.
From that's one aspect. But when you look at it from a diplomatic view, he was quite. The sports people become quite diplomatic. I mean, they've made a lot of money.
Well, that's why Muhammad Ali is the greatest.
This is why he didn't care about money. He didn't care about contracts. He didn't care about. He stood for what he believed, and it's standing for what you believe and understanding. With regards to that. So in the United Kingdom, in Europe, finding in the last 100 years, Europe is coming, to terms with Islam. And we've not had a breakout like Ali in Europe that I can remember. I think there's in the comments who can mention someone, maybe they can do.
I think it was yourself in the second podcast, and I've only been watching again sporadically. I think Khabib really does.
Khabib is
stand
now
head and shoulders above
We
them.
won't get to obviously the same status or level.
But Khabib is the modern representative of the Muslim community.
Definitely.
On an international
the core
scale.
values that he's reinstilling in the youngsters: respect for parents, honoring your mother and father, putting deen over dunya, and all these principles which we often touch upon in our bayanat. He's doing that on a very international level. And respect
people
to him.
can't say out to him.
No, he doesn't knock you out.
Because he'll just put you in a Komodo lock or he'll put you in a headlock and boom, you're
McGregor
gone.
about saying things
something about him,
say.
and Conor got dealt with. And
exactly.
We can talk about UFC and Conor and his legacy later. We know Khabib is the pound.
I think I'm letting myself on a little bit too much in this podcast. People are going to be thinking Imam Sam knows a bit too much about
but
these.
It's good to know Imam Adil. I've always said that.
Yeah.
And our teacher, Azikibla Pirzada Saab, from the days of when we were studying at Jami al-Karam, he always told us that you should have one eye on the dunya, one eye on the deen. You should know what's happening. Read newspapers. Read the news. Be present and
informed
about what's happening in the world, whether that's sports, politics, whatever it may be.
Because it's the only way you can affect the world.
Definitely.
Ulama have to be up to date. They can't be cocooned and restricted to just the books that they've learned in Dars Nizami, the Hidayahs and the Shara Tahzeebs and the Quduris and they can't be restricted to Nur al-Anwar and Nur al-Iza and all these books that we've studied in Dars Nizami. You can't be restricted just to that, man. You've got to think outside the box. You're working in the community. And we will talk about the role of an imam in the community and mosques in communities on a later date. But I think some of the names that come to mind, like when we just scan over the world and we look at the impact of great Muslims in the last 100 years, Sayyid Nursi, I don't know if you know of this name well, in Turkey.
Okay.
Phenomenal Sufi Imam, Maulana, a great scholar that lived. Sayyid Nursi is a great man who's writing, tafsir as well.
MashaAllah.
In Turkey, he had a profound, and Turkey is a large Muslim. In Europe, Turkey is the representatives of Islam. It's a Muslim country. Turkey is a Muslim. Though, Kamal Ataturk and the history of Turkey we know about. We're talking about not just, Sayyid Nursi, but most recently now, under the radar, he doesn't get the attention, but we all know within our circles that the great Sheikh Mahmoud Al-Afandi You know, Hafizahullah Ta'ala, Allah give him a long life, healthy life.
Ameen.
The impact he's had, the Naqshbandi in, you know, over 400, 500, 600 schools he's built in Turkey alone, if I'm not mistaken. Hundreds of thousands of murids.
You know, of them ba'adab.
All of them with beards, all of them, you know, more greater than we are.
Bashara as well.
And Bashara, and, you know, they follow the, in Turkey, you've got these guys, you know, maybe Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
I was just going to say, what do you think of him, Imah?
You know, Erdogan, I think he's a diplomat. Every leader has to be diplomatic in his approach. But there's certain, like, when it comes to the Palestine issues, it's quite clear.
He wears his heart on his sleeve on that issue.
And even the caricatures, what France did against the Prophet ﷺ, he actually was quite vocal.
Yeah.
He says the right things.
His actions speak louder than his words. That's what I like about Erdogan. And not just his beautiful tilawat of the Quran.
Oh, he's got a beautiful voice, man.
You know, he's got a mesmerizing
And I think he's Hafiz of the Quran, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
He was Ozil's best man as well.
And what's profound is that Erdogan, who is the president of the Republic of Turkey, you know, this guy, when he was elected, he's at the Mazar and Maqam of Sayyidina Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. You know, when Saddam becomes the president, he knows he has to summon himself to the great Sayyidina Muhyiddin Abdul Qadir al-Ghailani, and he has to make dua at the Maqam of Sayyidina Qutb al-Rabbani, Sayyidina Abdul Qadir Ghailani, because he knows this is where the mamba of all khair that Allah Almighty gives to His creation through His awliya and through His lovers and His chosen ones. And you know, Saddam goes there, and Erdogan goes to Sayyidina Abu Ayyub. This is the greatest figure buried in Turkey, Sayyidina Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. So you've got these, and then when you go to the Middle East, in the last 100 years, one of the great sheikhs who I've been inspired by as a speaker and orator, a political force, was the great Sayyidina Mutawalli al-Sha'rawi. Sheikh Sha'rawi, whose talks, you know, that talk on rizq and sustenance. You know, one guy anyone who listens to this will say, my sustenance is from Allah. What is written for me will not go to nobody else. It will come to me whatever happens. So Mutawalli Sha'rawi was a great orator, and you know, he's passed away. He's got over 1 million followers on Twitter. Over 1 million. This guy is, in Egypt, he was a phenomenon. Like Sheikh Abdul Hamid Kishk, rahmatullah alayhi. This guy was a political voice. He spoke up for the Muslims. You know, the atrocities against the Muslims. So, you've got, you know, Abdul Hamid Kishk, you've got, you know, Mutawalli Sha'rawi in the last 100 years. Then you move, you know, you go through Syria. Syria's profound, Sheikh Ibrahim al-Yaqubi. You got the likes of Sheikh Badruddin al-Hassani,
Sheikh Ramadan al-Bouti,
Sheikh Saeed Ramadan al-Bouti, you know, phenomenal. You've got others who are profound, you know, who have stood for the rights of Muslims, who have spoke up against injustice, oppression, who've transcended, you know, in Syria. Then you've got, and there's names I've missed out here,
so
you know,
these
forgive
are
me for that.
revolutionaries now, for those of you who are probably joining us, revolutionaries now in the religious sphere. And then in the religious circle, mashallah, we've dedicated the bulk of our podcast towards, you know, influential Muslim revolutionaries in the political and support
in the Western world.
In the Western world. And if we look at in the African world, Sheikh Ibrahim Niasse,
mashallah, of
the Tijani Silsila, people don't know the profound effect. He has millions of murideen in Africa, millions. This guy is
Qadri Silsila, if I'm not mistaken.
Qadri Tijaniya. And we know Sheikh Ahmed Tijani quite well, you know, from my childhood, growing up in Jami al-Karam, one of the great shuyukh that we hosted. Sheikh Ibrahim Niasse, who is the grand sheikh of, if I'm not mistaken, Sheikh Ahmed Tijani. You know, Sheikh Ibrahim Niasse, rahmatullah alayhi, was one of the great shuyukh in Africa. His impact in Africa. Sheikh Habib Ahmed Mashur al-Haddad, you know, from Yemen, his impact in Ethiopia and in East Africa. How many people these guys changed? These are people who have left their homes, gone to other parts of the world and converted hundreds and thousands, millions.
Sheikh Murabit al-Hajj.
Sheikh Murabit al-Hajj.
What a revolutionary.
In Islamic scholarship.
Is that Sheikh
you know,
Hamza Yusuf?
Sheikh Hamza's, you know, teacher, Sheikh Murabit al-Hajj, phenomenal. Phenomenal. The Arif impact Billah. He has, you know, an Arif Billah, over 100 years old, memorizer of the Siha Sitta, the 6 books of, you know, Siha of Hadith, you know, Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, Abu Dawood, Ibn Majah and Nasa'i. These this guy memorized the whole of those books. His tradition, the Mauritanian tradition, who Sheikh Hamza himself directly was influenced by, who's been taught by. These are profound leaders, and they've created great leaders. And then when we now move to what Imam Adil, who I'm going to let him dedicate a lot of the time to now.
I think just before we come to that, I think obviously making it relevant to our brothers and sisters who are watching here in the UK, before we come to the Indian subcontinent, a question from me to you.
Yeah.
Who do you think would fit the description, Afsab as well, the description of the revolutionaries? We tried to obviously mention a few within the sport and political circles, but in terms of Muslim revolutionaries in Islam, in the religion, in the UK.
I know there's one name, and I know Imah knows much more about that person than me, that I've always said is Shah Ahmad Noorani Siddiqui Sahab.
Yes, Maulana Shah Ahmad Noorani, who Rahmatullah alayhi, who is a Siddiqui, descendant of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, whose father was Maulana Abdul Alim as-Siddiqui, Maulana Abdul Alim Siddiqui, who is the Khalifa of our great Imam, the great Mujaddid, Al-Imam, Ala Hazrat Imam Ahl Sunnat, who's a Khalifa of days. Ala Hazrat, if I'm not mistaken, passed away in 1921. So, 1921. Is that correct?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, if we're not mistaken, I think Allah Hazrat passed away in 1921. 100-year Urs was...
That was Islamic Urs, yes.
Yes, Islamic, yes. Okay, so
1921. 28th of October, 1921.
So, next year will be 100 years,
In the
according to the Gregorian calendar,
Yeah.
that Imam Ahmad Raza has left this world. And his impact, if we was to just touch into the subcontinent, you have to start with him. Because his impact, and then Sayyid Naimuddin Muradabadi,
I think we'll come to my question then at the
Abdul
end.
Alim Siddiqui,
Yeah.
Maulana Abdul Alim Siddiqui Rahmatullah alayhi. These are two of the main khulafa who in the religious field and in the field of missionary work, Islamic missionary work, Sunni missionary work. There's no denying, no disputing that, and he produced a son like Shah Ahmad Noorani, who Imam Sahib is going to touch on as well. But your question in the UK, I want to answer me. Dare I say this, and I'm going to say this because of my relationship, because of my love, because of my connection. In the last 30, 40 years, a man who's had, prior to that, if we was to say, let's go back to 30s, 40s, we don't hear much in the UK of, Abdullah Quilliam. These are common names that prop up. But in terms of impact, Pir Sayyid Maruf Hussain Shah Sahab.
Definitely.
100%.
A man in Bradford who's built
18 to 20 massages,
up
madaris.
and
the
down
first
in the
one
UK.
In the country, was it?
Yeah.
Southfield Square, was that the first?
The first one, Howard Street, and then later Southfield Square. Pir Maruf Sahab, who's still alive, who's in Bradford, profound impact. His services to Islam in the UK, no denying. Allama Qamar Zaman Azmi, no denying. Mufakkir Islam, the World Islamic Mission, he was the right-hand man of Maulana Shah Ahmad Noorani. And that mission. Sheikh Muhammad Imdad Hussain Pir Zada, who for me is most profound, who wrote the tafsir of the Quran. These are Muslim personalities right now alive, present, who in the last 50, 60 years have had a profound impact. Along with them, as a Pir Alauddin Siddiqui Sahab of Noor TV,
MashaAllah.
this man set up a Muslim channel for Sunni community called Noor TV.
Today, Sheikh al-Alam.
Sheikh al-Alam was his laqab, was his title that he was known by. And along with them, then you've got others like whom? Sultan Bahu and the impact Sultan Bahu in terms of madaris.
Yeah.
They have built a lot of mosques and masjids, and they have a profound impact. So these are, within the religious sphere, some of the huge, Amir Khan in the sporting sphere, and these in the religious, these are some of the huge luminaries that we have present and that have passed away, who have had a profound impact on Islam in the United Kingdom.
I think we're waiting for the political one, Imam Adil, to answer your question on that. Because I did the religious one. I think we are waiting for the political one. I don't know what you lot think,
I think, again, the dynamics of politics in the UK are not similar to Europe, for example, or America. I think it's not as
a Muslim political voice.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, I don't
Where
think
is that Muslim political voice?
in the
Yeah.
UK? We've just
You know,
not had it.
who's
Well,
transcended and
we've been disappointed recently. The vote that they had on LGBTQ issue. A lot of our Muslim MPs, I mean, without naming and shaming, unfortunately, didn't stand up for the rights of what Islam believes
Absolutely.
regarding to that. And many other issues like that. And this isn't a political podcast, but it's a shame that nobody really can be mentioned in that discussion regarding political revolutionaries
I was just trying to think.
in this last 50 to 100 years in the UK. Maybe.
I forgot to mention the name Sufi Abdullah Khan Sahib of Gamgol Sharif.
Yes, mashallah.
You know, he came in the 50s and 60s. These are guys who have laid the foundations of within this country that
Abdul
are
Wahab Siddiqui, rahmatullah.
Mullah Abdul Wahab Siddiqui,
from Nuneaton,
Nuneaton,
Hijaz College.
Hijaz College. These are huge names, and we will dedicate a podcast to these, individually who they are. We might call the Murideens or whatever in a later day. There's so much to talk about.
Again, it's very important for our brothers and sisters, youngsters who are influenced by sports personality. We mentioned this point so many times in our bayanat, that they know who the actual role models are and what our history is, especially in the UK, in the West. And it's been a fantastic discussion so far. I
think Imam Adil will agree on this point, definitely, that you can do all the good actions, but if it's not complemented and founded upon sound belief, sound creed, those actions will not hold value. And Nation of Islam is the best example. They stood for rights movements, everything, but their belief is corrupt, is deviant. Therefore,
They didn't even stand the test.
and therefore Ali and Muhammad Ali and Malcolm Shabazz, Malik Shabazz, these guys left unseen that, and their good deeds, may Allah elevate them in paradise in their ranks.
Ameen.
And you see that, and moving from the UK, moving from the UK across Europe, Turkey, Egypt, we've touched on these, Middle East. We're going to go towards the subcontinent, and a large part of the Muslim world is in the subcontinent and Middle East.
Our affiliation is
Our direct affiliations are to the subcontinent, to Pakistan, to India, and the power of the subcontinent and what's happening. And in the last 100 years, Imam Adil, carrying on from where I touched on Ala Hazrat, tell us, and somebody mentioned Pir Sayyid Meher Ali Shah Sahib, whose name comes up, especially in the discussion of Khatm Nabuwat, which I'm going to ask you to touch on in a few words and not go into speech mode and just keep it the way you're flowing. And
I think I've done well so far.
Imam Adil, you're amazing.
Guys, if you found that Imam Adil's done well, please leave comments and respond.
And share the podcast.
And share the podcast. And also, wherever you're watching from, please, tell us where you're from, which city you're from, which country you're from. It'd be good to know the sort of demographics of where we're reaching out at this moment in time. So, Imam Adil, Hafiz Saab touched on the West. I'm going to give you the platform for the East. Tell us in the last 100 years, politically, religiously, spiritually, those who have had a profound impact and revolutionized the Muslim world and Muslim impact.
I think you began the discussion rightfully by mentioning Sayyidi Ala Hazrat Imam Ahl Sunnat, Mujaddid Deen wa Millat, Maulana Shah Ahmad Riza Khan, alayhi rahmat wa ridwan. He is obviously an individual who was and is the Mujaddid of the last century, and it is our Iman and Wijdan. He is the Mujaddid until it's established the Mujaddid of this century as well. Yes. So all the good in the Indian subcontinent stems from and is rooted from Sayyidi Ala Hazrat.
No doubt.
Again, for the brothers and sisters who are watching, a bit of a history lesson. The partition of Bar-e-Saghir Hindustan happened on the 15th of August 1947. Yeah.
Yani India and Pakistan split.
Two-nation concept, which was inspired by Sayyidi Ala Hazrat, and then taken further by an individual whose name we can't have this podcast without mentioning. That name is Allama Iqbal.
Yes, Muhammad Iqbal.
Musawwir Pakistan, Darvesh Sialkoti, an individual who passed away actually 1938.
Mustafa,
that's,
if
Mustafa
Before
was here, he'd better fact
the
check.
founding of Pakistan.
Yeah. So 9 years before Mulk Pakistan was formed,
He was the visionary of Pakistan.
he was the visionary of Mulk Pakistan, the
his
two-nation
foresight
concept.
had this already. And Iqbal, Imam Adil is a figure. If we spend just a bit of time on Iqbal, and we're going to spend a bit of time on all these names you're going to mention, Iqbal was a figure who, if we was to say Muslim revolutionary, we've done West and we've done East now.
Yeah.
He was East and West.
Subhanallah.
Why? Because he went back to He studied at Cambridge.
Yeah.
He studied in Germany. He studied all the Western philosophies and principles and ideologies, and he was a philosopher. Iqbal he was a philosopher, somebody who was ahead of his time. He knew and predicted. वो मुअज़्ज़ज़ थे ज़माने में मुसलमान होकर तुम ख़्वार हुए हैं तारिक कुरान होकर. He's talking about the past. Muslims were honored because they were Muslim, they submitted to Allah, and you are disgraced because you've left the Quran. He's saying the Quran is what made them great, the Quran is what will make you great. Don't leave this book.
Subhanallah.
He talks about Palestine. He spoke about so much.
Yeah.
In
And again,
his poetry.
Within his poetry, within his ta'limat, his teachings, it's all Sunni Islam. That's something that I want to emphasize
The
again and
core
again.
theme here.
They nisbat and link to Dat Ali Hujweri, Mujaddid al-Faisani, the great Sufi Gnostics of the Indian subcontinent. And that's something which is important, profound.
And I think, it's fitting to say here, this statement that Sunni Islam, Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, is the correct interpretation of Islam.
Yeah.
There's other interpretations out there who claim to be correct. But the most accurate and correct interpretation of our deen is Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, Sunni Islam, which we term it as now. And all these figures aligned to, and we're going to, of course, as Sunnis, we're going to, we're not Shia, we're not going to mention the Khomeinis and the Sistanis and these guys out now.
For both of you, obviously saying Sunni Muslims, the media use Sunni as well, so if you could just touch on that a bit more, the definition, please. Like, what I mean is like, the media orthodox will just say he's an orthodox Sunni Muslim or he's a Shia Muslim. There's them two. So we just want to tell the people.
Of course, people are claiming, claimants to Sunni is hijacking this title. The reality is it's those who follow this tradition.
Yeah.
Tradition of these scholars, of the Ijma', of the Sunnah, of the Quran, who go back 1400 years, not, 500 years to Saudi Arabia or the Arabian Peninsula, not 600 years to a man in Syria. No, we're talking about traditional, solid, orthodox Islam passed on from chest to chest, chain to chain, to our time. This is what you would.
It's commonly asked to me, hence why I just threw it out to you.
It's good because again, a lot of brothers and sisters are watching.
Getting educated,
mashallah.
yeah. And Imam Adil probably
it's a form of education, but I think history speaks for itself. These great personalities that we mentioned across the board, from east to west, from here in the UK and Europe to those in the Middle East, in every Safiya that we've covered, politics and sports and what was the other one? Religion, that's the one we're doing. Again, they have this common connection and link that all of them, we don't have to speak here on their behalf. History speaks for them.
Very true.
History speaks for them. They are those individuals who wouldn't really be in this discussion of revolutionaries if they did not align themselves to Orthodox Sunni Islam, yani Ahli Sunnati wal Jama'at. So I think history speaks for itself. But again, coming back to the discussion regarding the great influential figures and the revolutionaries in the Indian subcontinent. So we've said Allama Iqbal then inspired Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Muhammad Ali Jinnah was just a standard lawyer, an individual who then became Qaid-e-Azam. Yes, he became the forefather of Mulk Pakistan, and we should be proud, Hubbe Watan, we should be proud of our nisbat and our link to Mulk Pakistan. I know a lot of people now try to advocate we are British Muslims. There's no denying that, and that has its own place, but we shouldn't, what did Hafiz Zain used to say all the time?
Don't forget your roots.
Your tree.
Oh yeah, the tree. Yeah.
Don't forget your roots, you tree. Yeah. So, this is something that we need to push home and really emphasize to our watching audience, that don't forget your roots. It's all well and good being glamorized by the scholars of the Arab world. And again, I have nothing against that. But we should know who our history,
Yeah, but Imam
what
Adil,
our history is,
I've
and
always
who our
had this,
great...
like, I've had this difference
Yeah.
with you, and I'm gonna drop this here before you carry on mentioning the personalities and we touch on them.
we're talking.
We live here in the UK.
We do, yeah. Well done.
We are, thank you. Yeah, true. I better check my passport. But we live here in the UK. You're advocating that we shouldn't forget our roots, where we come from. What's a priority, here or there? And should we be more politically, religiously aware of what we are, where we are here now, how to strengthen Islam here? My answer, yes, 120%. I should look at my way, spend my time to strengthen Islam in the UK. Focus on this. But then, like yourself, somebody who holds, and I hold Didi as well, the subcontinent. I mean, I could talk all night about the greats that have come as well. But, it's your turn. You're going to tell us about that more. What's your view on that? What do you say?
I'm not denying or for any moment during this discussion dismissing the importance of being good Muslims here in the UK. And this is where we are. This is where our parents have been. This is where our children are, and alhamdulillah will be in the future. There's no denying that. What we're saying is that, again, linking it to the topic, that these great Muslim revolutionaries, if you look at Muhammad Ali, if you look at Malcolm X, if you look at all these great individuals that we mentioned, again, study their lives, read their biographies, watch their documentaries or whatever it is that we do in order to engage with them. They didn't forget their roots.
True.
Again, you
Very
mentioned
true.
it earlier. Ali was talking about, rights for
Black
for
people
black
all the time,
people
yeah.
all the time. Slavery isn't just in America 40 years ago, 50 years
yeah.
ago. It goes back hundreds of years ago. So in order to be successful in the present and in the future, we need to have a connection with our past.
100%.
We need to make sure that we are aware of our roots and our affiliations. That doesn't then mean that we abandon our duty and responsibility as Muslims living in Britain, as Muslims living in the United Kingdom. Of course, that's very important. But I feel, and I'm a staunch advocate of this, that our success can only truly transpire in the present, here and now, and in the future when we are deep-rooted in our past. Be that Muslim Spain, the Muslims ruling in Spain for 800 years. We've seen over the last 5 years or so with Ertugrul.
Yeah.
I don't know how do you pronounce it?
I don't know how to pronounce it.
Ertugrul, yeah.
Yeah, Ertugrul.
Ertugrul.
Again, I'm not a big fan or nor have I ever watched. Somebody asked me once when we were in the compound of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. First time I went 2018, a couple of weeks after Dad passed away. Allah raised his darajat. And, he says to me, brother from Blackburn, he goes, do you watch Ertugrul? And I just stopped there and I looked at him, head to toe. I go, do I look like I'm somebody who has time to sit and watch Ertugrul? I think it's something like 60, 70 episodes.
100 episodes a season. I've never watched Imam
Yeah.
Adil, to be honest. I don't have the time as well.
I've never watched
So
it.
it's one of them things. So what I'm saying, but a lot of people have become interested in the history of the Ottomans.
Yeah, they have. Yeah,
In the last 5-10 years ago, whereas when we were growing up, it was non-existent.
That gets to me a bit, that Imam Adil.
Yeah.
Because you're going to carry on with the point. I'm just saying it gets to me a bit because the Ottomans, obviously, the source of pride with Muslims and everything, but it's to the point that you're saying, why have we forgotten our roots? Why are we running after them? Like, we're trying to affiliate ourselves with them, but we're Pakistani Muslims. We should find out who was ours.
Yeah. No, but this is our responsibility, and I applaud, mashallah, Imam Sab, third podcast third episode, that, we are having these discussions. Over 250 brothers and sisters watching at this moment in time. There'll be others who will be watching this afterwards as well. That we've got to make sure that we have that affiliation with our past, our history. And certainly as Muslims from Pakistan, from the Indian subcontinent, we need to be well-versed, well-acquainted, and well-educated with not just the scholars of the Indian subcontinent, but with our history, our heritage, our culture.
Well, I think any nation, any people, any civilization who forgets its roots and history doesn't live long.
True.
You have to always, and history is a subject which is taught in our schools, but what history? Greek history.
Roman
What
history.
history? Roman history. You know, these are
The
what about
Egyptians.
the Egyptian history. These were big empires. What about Muslim history? You ask a young lad, tell us about Islam and the history of Islam, 1400 years. He couldn't talk. He couldn't tell you jack. He doesn't know nothing about, Ertugrul. He doesn't know nothing about Uthman, the Ottoman Empire, the founder of the Ottoman Empire. He doesn't know nothing about the Seljuks. He doesn't know nothing about the Mongolians.
Imam
I'm
Sahib,
saying history. He
थोड़ी
doesn't
जी
know nothing
पटवारी
about.
इस्तेमाल करने हो तो बहुत दूर नहीं गल है ना. Just our own, like I mentioned.
Right, he doesn't know who his
1947.
granddad is.
There you go.
He doesn't know who his great granddad is. They're not bothered. And if you don't know history, you will
I
always
remember a
be
quote from one
deficient.
of your speeches, a bit of a fun boy back in the
then,
days.
not anymore.
But what's it
Nice to
called? The youngsters of today don't know the difference between Raja and Roger.
Yeah.
You remember that quote?
Yeah.
They don't know the difference between Raja and Roger.
Not that we promote caste system,
Maybe,
anything, but
maybe
just,
because they're not interested. Maybe because they've not really been exposed to that.
it's never been highlighted.
It hasn't.
The schools and the mosques. Our convos, we could talk all night because we, as three brothers, we talk. We're lucky we haven't got the youngest one here because he could talk for Britain as well. But we're talkers in our nature.
He's
We
on
can
tomorrow.
talk all day, all night. It brings it to the point like, we in our madrasas don't teach, Muslim history within our madrasa syllabi. We don't have it. There's so many madrasas up and down the country. The madrasa teachers themselves don't know the history. They don't know the Ottoman Empire. They don't know the impact of the Mujahideen, the revival series. Let's do a series for young people on 14 great men, 14 personalities of each from the 100 years.
We actually had a meeting a couple of years ago with Sheikh Aslam, if you remember, on doing a conference on this. And I won't share the outcome of that meeting because it goes against what we're discussing here.
Yep.
But, we've got to make them great personalities of the past relevant to our youngsters today. And the greatest of them all, no doubt, is Afdalul Bashar, Sayyiduna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Surah number 33, verse 21. And no doubt, he is the greatest role model. Yes, all these revolutionaries who we're talking about, be that the
inspired by him.
Mujahideen or be that those who we've recently touched upon from the last 50 to 100 years, they take the inspiration, their source from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sallam.
Or from somewhere in history. Like everyone who's great, whenever I've studied into them, they've looked into history to see what made another person great. And they studied that and then they implemented that into their life and tried to make it. I'll give an example. Like Mike Tyson said, he used to always study Alexander the Great before he went into a fight. Every single time. So he went back in history to make himself better for now. That's what I'm trying to say. And sometimes the youngsters
Sometimes
of
you gotta
today
look
are
at history
asking
to
why
know what
Yeah.
made him great. That I can take that ingredient and make myself great.
And when the youngsters ask us what's so important about history happened back then, well, when you go back, you start learning more and more, and you can implement it, for us as well. And it's all about knowledge and gaining knowledge and getting more knowledge and just passing it on.
But again, if you're talking about the madrasas, there's a lot of challenges. There's so much for us to teach and cover.
We'll do that on a podcast, Imam Adil.
I'm looking forward to that.
I just want to, move your car, direct it back onto tell us from Muhammad Ali Jinnah.
So Qaid Azam, we were saying.
Yeah.
So Muhammad Ali Jinnah, influential. A few years after the partition in 1947, they essentially departed from this world. But again, in the political discussion of revolutionaries in the Indian subcontinent, India had Gandhi and Pakistan had Muhammad Ali Jinnah. So,
But Jinnah who stood behind Jinnah? Pir Sayyid Jamaat Ali Shah Sahab, Muhaddis Ali Puri, Khwaja Qamruddin Sialvi of Sial Sharif, Pir Pathan,
Pir Sahib of Manki Sharif.
Manki Sharif. These luminaries, Muhammad Ali Jinnah takes a lot of credit to be the political face.
Yeah.
He went to every big astana and said, summon your murids. Pakistan's a country, subcontinent is an area which was controlled by the great astane. And these darsgahs, these were the ones that controlled the subcontinent. It was found upon these. This was the tradition within the subcontinent.
Which
People
has
don't know.
continued till today, hence why we've got a lot of affiliation towards these
Astane and Dargahs and
And Iqbal spoke about this as well. That if the Astane don't align themselves, those who sit as the Gadi Nasheens don't align themselves to Quran and Sunnat and traditional ulum and ulum Zahariya, so on and so forth, they lose their position. And again,
have we seen that?
Have we seen that?
Iqbal's seen that. You know,
Yeah,
a lot of them have lost it.
I was going to share a hadith sharif. I thought about this before the podcast. There's this narration in Tirmidhi Sharif. Imam Sahib will know, obviously, and Hafiz Sahib, mashallah, studied the deen as well to a good level. That ittaqu firasat al-mu'min fa innahu yanzuru bi nurillah. You touched upon it in the introduction. The Prophet ﷺ here epitomizes a revolutionary that the words translate as, be careful of the discernment, the foresight, the firasat of a believer, for indeed he sees with the light of Allah. And wallahi, all these luminaries, and it's been a beautiful discussion.
Allah
all
put
these
a light in their heart.
Allah Almighty has given them this firasat. Wallahi, and they didn't just think for their times. It reminds me of the story of Qila Pizar Sahib. I often mention in my bayanat as well, of the old man who's planting seeds for a date palm tree.
No, he'll never live to see.
He won't actually eat the fruits of that tree. But when a youngster walks past and says, Baba, why are you planting the seeds? You're not going to eat the dates. And he responds by saying, Beta, I'm not planting the seeds so that I eat the dates. I'm planting the seeds so that you eat the dates and the generations after you. And this is what these revolutionaries did. They actually didn't just inspire people. You said Muhammad Ali, he transcended Muslims and non-Muslims. Everyone looked up to him. That wasn't just for his time when he passed away in 2016. That wasn't just for him then. He will carry on ila yawmil qiyamah. People will come 50 years later, 100 years later.
Ali's name will be mentioned.
Like Hafiz Asad, the young lad from Bradford or wherever you may be from, and people will mention his name. People will inspire to be like him. And this all comes from, like I was trying to mention the point, and I'm actually on a 12-hour shift today. I started teaching at 9:30.
But don't worry, Imam Adil, we will get Jabba to get some food in. We can have after this as well.
Rolai Pesi Kar, she made paliyan, and I'm not eating them for 2 days, so... Anyway, that's another podcast in itself. Marriage life.
Oh, yes. You can share. Hafiz Sahib can share, and me.
Well, soon to share.
Imam Asim is still sat here single.
God. Maybe we
Let's not start. Let's not start.
Get the violins out. They get the violins
should get my mum on here. Mum would be good on here.
No, Mum's podcast, Let's talk with Mum. But
wow, that'd be. I tell you what, loads of people will be guided. She'll give phenomenal guidance on how to bring children up. I mean, you guys are the best example.
I think that goes without saying that every parent is a revolutionary. You can look at this discussion from so many different
angles and aspects.
Again, going back to one of the first madrasas for a child is the laps of the mother. It's the mother who has that influence. If Ali became great, it was because his mother was great. If Malik Shabazz became great, it was because his mother and father were great. Even though his...
Not necessarily, I know the principle you're mentioning, or the rule you're mentioning, is not necessary that the roots, there's something within that. Maybe the concept of, Ashabul Kahf, in Suratul Kahf, Sayyidina Musa, when they stopped at 3 maqams, 3 places, and they killed the young boy.
Yeah.
And they said, why, why did he kill him to Sayyidina Khidr? And Sayyidina Khidr then explained that because this boy would have grown up to be disobedient to his mother and father, and then one of the ones was the wall.
There's always this argument in sociology.
And the ulama, they discern, they deduce a point here that they say that 7 generations before will benefit from the du'as on the power of the parents' du'a or the elderly du'a. 7 generations after will see the benefits and the fruits
athar and the effects will be felt.
That felt, and possibly parents, possibly around them, surrounding, something's triggered it.
Sociology, which maybe thora mujh padhe hua, they have that nature versus nurture argument. But I'm saying most of, we've been doing bayanat for, you've been a lot longer than me. I mean, I've been in the field for 10 years, so you're a bit of a veteran now, 15 years if not counting. Again, the great biographies of the Ibn Hajar al-Asqalanis and the Imam Ghazalis and Imam Bukhari, the great Baba Fariduddin, Gan Shakar Rahmatullah alayhi, the great example comes to mind. They were revolutionaries in their time. They were great Mujahideen. Khwaja Muinuddin,
Sheikh Ahmed
who was responsible for them reaching that pedestal, becoming the revolutionaries. 9 times out of 10, it's the parents. And again, youngsters who are watching, you might not be parents today, but tomorrow you'll be parents. You have that role and you have that responsibility where one day when you do become a parent, you will have to inspire your children. And we've seen that, in regards to those here in the West who are considered revolutionaries. And coming back to what we were talking about, we're going off topic a little bit. Those in the East, let's wrap this up and then you can come towards the conclusion of the podcast, because I can see your eyes.
No, I'm actually cool. I think we could go on for another hour, to be honest.
I don't know about
you.
Brothers and sisters.
Rumbling, so.
I've done a 12-hour shift today. I started teaching at 9:30 in the morning, and then obviously we had the madrasa, then we had a Khatam Sharif, and then I've taught a class as well. So Hafsa, mashallah, was only doing the Hifz class today. Were you at work?
No.
There you go. So only did Hifz class today, and
Let's
Imam Sahib, mashallah, is Imam Sahib. So, I'm finding it a bit difficult now, a bit croaky. So let's come to
So we've got
Ahmad Nurani,
Allama Shah Ahmad Nurani, who in the 70s, 60s, the Muslim ulama movement, and for me, you guys will definitely know one of my inspirations. And
sorry, just before, because I know it's gonna kick off as soon as we go towards the anger. After Jinnah, I don't know if Hafsam knows his politics in Pakistan that much.
For the history.
After Jinnah, can we say anyone who's been a revolutionary from amongst the politics or the politicians in Pakistan?
Nawaz Sharif. I'm only joking, Imam Adil, relax. Don't
Nawaz Sharif, what is you?
No, you got Bhutto family, the Nawaz Sharifs, you've got the
revolutionaries. Don't give me families.
These are political families that have ruled. You've got the generals that came, Parvez Musharraf, then you had
I think if anyone, it was
Ayub Khan.
I thought you were going to say General Ziaul Haq.
Ayub Khan, these guys.
Ziaul Haq he was a hardline, wasn't he?
Yeah.
You had these Ayub Khan, these guys. These are your last 50, 60 years are probably them. And people correct me, Islam, Pakistan's only 47, 2000 and it was 63 years old.
Yeah.
73 years old or 63 years old.
Okay.
63 years.
No, but I think one of the reasons why Pakistan suffers, and again, it's not a political podcast, one of the reasons it suffers is because of a lack of political stability.
Astute political leadership.
Yeah, and there's not really been anyone, with the exception of one or two, who have really become revolutionaries.
I think revolutionary in the field of science.
So if Pakistan has survived, this is the point I'm trying to make. I'm sorry, I'm keep butting in and probably get told off afterwards. But one of the reasons why Pakistan has survived is because of its strong affiliation to Astani, as you mentioned earlier,
ulama.
And the ulama. The ulama have been the backbone. You mentioned a few names. They were obviously just before the partition. But Muhaddis-e-Azam Pakistan, Hazrat Allama. Subhanallah.
Wow, what a guy.
Hazrat Ata Muhammad. Bandiyat bi rahmatullah. Ustadul Kul is their laqab. And again, youngsters won't know these people.
He probably didn't have the political Mufti Ahmad Yar Khan Naimi, and these guys politically weren't there. They weren't on the face. They weren't.
I think the first person
they produced people.
Yeah.
Who went into those.
The first person who transcended religion and politics, and merged the two, was the one who we mentioned a few times. After threw the name in earlier as well.
Shah Ahmad Nurani Siddiqui.
Maulana Shah Ahmad Nurani Siddiqui. What a man. What a man. I think I was reading that from the age of 12, every year of their life, every year of their life, they led Salatul Taraweeh and they read the Quran by heart.
Maulana Shah Ahmad Nurani, people,
Subhanallah.
Just this guy was a giant, and we have never really recovered since he passed until,
recently.
Allama Maulana Khadim Hussain Ridhwi Sahab came along.
Rahmatullah
alayhi. And we're going to come to him. We're talking about Allama Shah Ahmad Nurani, whose father. Go on to YouTube, and you will find clips of this man speaking in the English language.
Subhanallah.
From Pakistan. That tells you the greatness of this guy. He had connection to the West, East, and his right hand man, Maulana Abdul Sattar Khan Niazi.
Wow.
He was 6'5", if I'm not mistaken. Pathan and Maulana Abdul Sattar Khan Niazi, Big Kulla, these guys walked, and you'll see a very famous picture of Mullah Abdul Sattar Khan Niazi in chains. These people who stood against the Ahmadiyya movement, who wanted to be recognized as Muslims they wanted to be recognized as Muslims, yet they will never be recognized as Muslims because their beliefs.
Shah Ahmad Nurani Siddiqui rahmatullah alayhi was instrumental and pivotal in making sure that the bill which declared the Qadianis as kuffar was passed in the Parliament of Pakistan, in the government. It's in the constitution. So that is their legacy. And 2017, 3 years to the date, within these dates, they tried to amend that particular article, Nawaz Sharif and his government, where they were influenced by Qadianis and Ahmadis, Article 295C. Yes, regarding Aqidah Khatm Nabuwat, which is the foundation and the core of our belief, that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is the last and final messenger and prophet of Allah, first part, and no other messenger and prophet will come after him. And that's what they try to amend.
Yes. Now, something very important that I want to add as a disclaimer here: we're not here to discriminate anybody, attack anyone. Or this is what we believe. This is what we stand for. This is what we have the right to speak on. And the reality is that anybody who believes that there to be a prophet after the Prophet ﷺ, that person is not a Muslim. That is not Islam. That is against Islam and the teachings of Islam. And Pakistan, they had this scenario and situation where they are citizens. They live there. Those who believe Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani, for example, as a prophet after the Prophet ﷺ. Al-Iyadu Billah. They are citizens of Pakistan, but they are not Muslims. They are saying, oh, we are Muslims as well. No, you're not. When this issue arose in Parliament, in Geneva, in Switzerland, who stood and spoke to defend this? Shah Ahmad Nurani, Rahmatullah Alayhi Siddiqui.
And not just that, we're bypassing our Dada Ustad, Huzur Ziyal Ummat, Pir Karam Shah Al-Azhari, Rahmatullahi Ta'ala alayhi, another great revolutionary from amongst the ulama and the religious figures in Mulk Pakistan. The Darul Uloom Muhammadiyya Ghausiya in Sargoda, Bera Sharif Sargoda is considered
students
considered to be one of the leading madaris in the Indian subcontinent. So again, these are individuals who planted the seeds in their lifetime, revolutionaries planted the seeds in their lifetime, and we are now bearing the fruits. We are now eating the fruits of them efforts and the hard work of these.
And it tells you that these ulama were involved in politics. And this is a picture of Maulana Abdul Sattar Khan Niazi and Maulana Shah Ahmad Nurani that you can see on the screen. And these are profound. These were men who were sincere. Sahib tahajjud. Dhukir Allah.
These are those men of Allah that when you look at their faces, they remind you of Allah.
That's Maulana Shah Ahmad Nurani Rahmatullahi Ta'ala on the right.
Yeah.
On the right, and Mullah Abdul Sattar Khan Niazi on the left. And these are your...
And I don't know if Jawad can get the picture of the three giants of their time. Let's not forget Ghazali Zama, Hazrat Allama Sayyid Saeed Ahmad Kazmi Rahmatullahi Ta'ala. There's a beautiful, and the union and the love between the ulama of that time. And I'm not pointing fingers at anyone here. You've done your disclaimer. I want to do mine as well. I don't want anyone thinking that I'm having a pop at anyone at this moment in time. But the unity and the love between the ulama of that time is something which is envious for the ulama of this time.
Very true.
If Jawad can get that picture of the three of them together, three heavyweights, if you, and I know you're into your sport, if you had Ali, Tyson, and maybe the third one.
Roy Jones, innit?
Possibly, or Floyd Mayweather.
No, Roy Jones for me.
Yeah.
Floyd Mayweather, I don't know.
Floyd Mayweather, Imam Adil, Floyd Mayweather.
Floyd Mayweather.
Mayweather,
Yeah.
I just want to add something here that in the field of contribution of Muslim revolutionary in the field of science, we cannot forget Dr. Abdul Qadir.
Subhanallah.
This man has equipped the Islamic Republic of Pakistan with an atom bomb.
Yeah.
A nuclear bomb.
And given us the status of a superpower in world on the world stage.
On the world stage. And we can't forget Dr. Abdul Qadir here. Dr. Abdul Qadir is a phenomenal figure here who's a scientist, Muslim scientist who has helped Islam.
Is he still alive?
If I'm not mistaken, he still is
yeah,
alive,
yeah.
Oh,
but a figure you can go away, research on. These are all names that you should go away and study the lives of. These are great men. And we're talking about, when we're talking, going back to Maulana Shah Ahmad Noorani, Abdul Sattar Khan Niazi. For me, if you ask me, you've not asked me the question, but I'll ask myself, who from the subcontinent has had an impact in my thought and thinking, and who's played a pivotal role in my growth as a Muslim? From the subcontinent, I'm gonna mention the orator of that time, of that generation.
Wow.
The great Maulana Muhammad Shafi Okarvi
Wow.
of Okara and that, who Rahmatullah alayhi, who was a phenomenal orator, and somebody who I've looked up to, for a long time now, and whose speeches have had profound impact, be them on the science of Islamic creed, Islamic history. He could speak English. He went to South Africa. He taught the world. These guys were
18,000 speeches in their lifetime.
in his lifetime. He only was 55 when he passed away. He was born in 1930, passed away in 1985. Allama Shah Ahmad Noorani, he was a contemporary of their time.
I think that's another consistent theme. Again, Afsab has been doing his research. A lot of these, with the exception of one or two, Ali obviously lived for a long time, but a
They
lot
live
of the
short lives, yeah.
You know how old
revolutionaries.
Malcolm X was?
He was in his 40s, wasn't he?
39 years old.
Allahu Akbar.
He didn't even see his 40th birthday, yet he lived
And look at the impact.
the impact of this guy.
Decades have passed and we're still talking about.
Non-Muslims still talk about him.
Yeah.
I mean,
His name strikes a chord on that.
big time.
And Allah takes work. Nawawi Rahmatullah alayhi.
Yeah. Great example
He hadn't
from the
reached,
history of
I
Islam.
think 40.
Yeah.
Profound the books
Sharh
he's
Sahih
written.
Muslim, Riyadus Salihin, Kitabul Arba'in.
So many Kitabul Azkar, so many Azkar he's wrote, so many. And then this is Maulana Shafi Okarvi, the one who I look up to. This is the guy. This is phenomenal speaker, and a consistent theme within the lives of these men was what? That these guys were Sahib Tahajjud. These guys used to lead the Tahajjud prayer and that. They read the Tahajjud prayer. They never missed this, and that's something phenomenal and profound. And when we continue through the names of people over the decades that have had profound impact, the 80s and 90s, we went through a certain period, and I'd say, it's only fitting that if we talk about a revolutionary of the last 30 years, we have to mention Amir al-Sunnat Maulana Ilyas Attar Qadri.
Without doubt.
The Dawat Islami organization, the missionary work,
Great
the
work.
Tabligh and Da'wah work that they have done, phenomenal, absolutely magnificent. Dawat Islami is in so many countries around the world, over 150 countries if I'm not mistaken. Hundreds and thousands of students have been produced and graduated from their institutes around the world. Everywhere I've been, they have been there, they're doing the work, and it's been spearheaded by whom? Maulana Ilyas Attar Qadri. But this organization was found upon whom? Many people don't know Dawat Islami was found by Maulana Ashraful Qadri, Maulana Shah Ahmad Noorani, and Maulana Muhammad Shafi Okarvi.
Subhanallah.
These three were the founding members of Dawat Islami organization. After they had left, the duty of running and continuing the work of Dawat Islami was given to Maulana Ilyas Attar Qadri, who today have
Has propelled
Dawat
it.
Islami TV channel,
Madani channel.
the madrasas, the masajid,
Ulama, they're producing.
ulama, phenomenal. They're doing great work.
And again, with Amir al-Sunnah, the link goes back to Sayyidi Ala Hazrat.
Maulana Ziauddin Madani Rahmatullah alayhi,
They're
who
the
was in-
Khalifa of Ziauddin Madani Rahmatullah alayhi.
So, and they were impacted by Allama Shah Ahmad Noorani and these great
Again, I
personalities.
think with these great revolutionaries, their greatness isn't realized during their lifetime.
Yeah,
True,
you
true,
will only know how great a guy
I think Ali is maybe the exception because he
Sporting
lived
legacy and
coming back because we're discussing we've not wrapped that discussion up.
Definitely.
I think Ali
he's a name that will always keep coming.
He was a
Yeah, yeah.
Muslim with
superstar
100 years.
during his lifetime. Yeah. He was the only one. I'd say.
and he was recognized for his greatness. I mean, maybe that what did you call it?
Before the Rumble in the Jungle fight, there's that video of him entering Zaire, the country. I've never seen anything like that. All them kids following one car. You know that famous image where he's waving his hand and he's saying Ali Bomba, yeah, Ali, and he's telling the kids to join with him. I mean, that was just adulation, and you'll never see any type of love and
I want to give a shout out. This, my one of my very good friends, Ifti, Team 13
From Batley.
from Batley. He's watching. He's saying he's loving it, and he's actually saying, I'm actually loving the true legend that is Imam Adil. and what he's saying, a lot of people.
Ifti. I was going to ask you about Ifti
so
that day.
we're gonna get Ifti on as well. He's a guy who's doing a lot of good work, humanitarian work and stuff like that.
Me Islam, not Imam Adil.
And
This is
he's saying that
actually-
you should stop looking like Turgut from Ertugrul.
Oh, that's
That's what he said, and he hasn't actually mentioned anything
Well,
to
this
me.
is
just
me on
on-
reserve fuel, so alhamdulillah. Thank you very much for your kind words, Iftikhar bhai.
So
Mashallah, a few brothers and sisters have messaged, they're enjoying the podcast. I think, again, it's good to educate our youngsters on these great luminaries
And the history and
personalities.
stuff.
But I think let's come towards some sort of a conclusion and really...
And I just wanna, one of the inspirations behind today's podcast, getting you on and everything, was that in the last 5-10 years, somebody who's had a profound impact on within Pakistan, not just Pakistan, the subcontinent, and even around the world. Is somebody who's a political voice, more so a religious voice, and who stood for two very key principles. He passed away a few days ago,
a week tomorrow.
A week tomorrow, actually. Look how time goes.
Wow.
And his videos, his clips were going viral. He was inspiring, awakening the hearts of many people. It's none other than Allama Khadim Hussain Ridhwi, rahmatullah alayhi, who Allama Saab was an individual, a personality, and a man who epitomized the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and put that above everything. And Imam Adil is going to really shed on to his life, because he's been inspired. I asked myself the question, who inspired me?
Maulana Shafiq Karwi Saab.
And if I ask this to Imam Adil, he will certainly say, especially in this short period of time.
I think there's two inspirations for me. Again, those who listen to my bayanat or know me on a personal level. Nasir-e Millat,
Yes.
Shanshai
Khitabat.
Golra Sharif, P. Sayyid Nasiruddin Nasir Rahmatullahi Ta'ala alayh.
What a speaker, man.
And
the
my
guy.
Dad used to love listening to their
Legend.
speeches.
Yeah. He was hooked
You
on
walk
him.
in and Dad's come back from work and we come back from a bayan and he sat there listening to P. Saab. P. Saab was again similar to Amirul Mujahideen, an individual who spoke the truth. And when you speak from here, then you impact the hearts of others. And when you speak from your own heart, you begin to impact the hearts of others. So P. Saab goes without saying, a great influence and role model for me. I've only ever really listened to the bayanat of P. Saab on my travels, and then obviously Amirul Mujahideen, Shaykh al-Hadithi wa Tafsir, Hazrat Allama Khadim Hussain Ridhwi Saab Rahmatullahi Ta'ala alayh. You've hit the nail on the head. Certainly an inspiration for me. I was introduced to them whilst I was doing a brief stint as an Imam during the months of Ramadan in Ilford, Albert Road Masjid by Maulana Hafiz Jamshed Saab. I remember sitting in his travel agency in
Next
his shop
door.
Next door to the masjid, and he
Albert Road, that is, by
and
the
he
way.
said to me
Anyone from
one
London?
day, have you heard this speaker? And I said no, and then he put a clip of theirs on, and to be honest, I was mesmerized from that day onwards. Allama Saab, we know, was ma'zur. He had lost the feelings in his leg. He was on a wheelchair from 2009.
Wow.
So 11 years now.
2009. So essentially from that period when they had pretty much, and that's...
And that's iconic.
yeah.
This is an icon this is a man who cannot walk, who cannot run, who cannot stand.
But he stood
He stood taller than all of them.
He stood taller than all of them.
He moved forward quicker than all of them.
Subhanallah.
And there were two things that I for me, what epitomized him, that he stood for: the Tahafuz-e Namuse Risalat and the
Aqeedah-e
Tahafuz of
Khatm.
Aqeedah
Ah,
Khatm Nabuwat.
Subhanallah.
Finality of prophethood and the honor and dignity of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, respecting and honoring him alayhi salatu wasallam. He was very, very, very vocal. Now, prior to 2015, 2014, we were hearing speeches sporadically, we heard. But he shot in that time frame.
Yeah.
Before all that, what was he?
Ustadul Ulama produced hundreds and thousands of scholars. A profound hafiz of the Quran, a master of the Arabic language.
Profound memory as well.
Wow.
Wow.
Abwab Sarf was one of the books that they wrote. And
I've actually read that book.
I remember Sayyid Ibrar Shah from Bedford.
Yeah, that's
one
why I
of
read
our
it.
friends. He actually tried to take a mistake out of that book.
Oh, stuff.
You know,
Yes.
when Allama Khadim was saying, Ridhwi Saab's, saying, the Gardans, Darba yadribu darban fahuwa daribun wa duriba yudribu darban fazaka madrubun lam yadrib
so many
lam yudrab
bayanat.
la yadribu la yudrabu la yudrib la yudrib
I
la
like
yudrib
how
la
Ahmed's
yudrib la
got that in
yudrib la
there, you
yudrib.
know. I just like how he got that in there.
Al amru minhu idrib li tudrib li yadrib li
Look,
yudrab. Wannahi anhu. And he goes on and on, and
I think we could all do the Daraba one. I'll be surprised
Stop
if
that
we
one.
did.
إخشوشنا يخشوشنا إخشيشانو فهو مخشوشن وأخشوشنا يخشوشنو إخشيشانو فهو مخشوشن. Maybe, I don't know, there's a bihi in there or not.
Yeah, I think that is the belief. I think that is the belief.
It's been a while. I mean, استغفر يستغفر استغفار فهو مستغفر مستغفر. These are, a lot of you guys probably won't know. Whoever's a student of knowledge will know what we're doing, but just zoom in more.
On the same link.
Is it on the same link, Joe? Are we back on? Right, fantastic. Guys, would you believe it? The power of this podcast has not caused a power cut in our area, but we've just been told that there's been a power cut in this area. So where we are sat in Bradford 8, there's been a power cut, and I'm not exaggerating saying that.
No, what did
because
you
Imam
say?
Adil
Remind what you just said.
Your words just came out completely wrong.
Completely,
there, but we
man.
know what you're
Go
trying
on,
to
go on,
say.
say it. You say it for us then.
No, I was going to say that the podcast is so electrifying that it's led to a power cut in the area.
You said our.
But you just obviously mingled all your words.
So what did I say then?
You said our podcast is so powerful
They always
that it
put me
didn't
down
cut
like
out
this.
the lights, but it did cut
They
out.
always
the
put me down like this. Always do this to me.
Not necessarily, but that was you.
Go say this is where you do it to yourself.
Yeah, you shot yourself in the foot. Let's be honest with that one. But anyway, moving on, coming towards some sort of a conclusion because our producer is getting a bit agitated now and saying let's wrap this up because it's coming close to the 2-hour mark. And mashallah.
So sorry, there's just been. I just want to explain.
Yeah,
It's been an electrifying podcast which has caused a power cut in this area, but it's not really that. There's somebody who might not understand that, but. There's been a power cut in the area. No, we've not been blocked off YouTube or anything like that. So please don't make stories up or anything of that sort. Sabr, please. And yes, we were talking about Amir al-Mujahideen, Hazrat Allama Maulana Khadim Hussain Ridhwi Saab, who was iconic and who was a voice for the oppressed, who was a voice for traditional Islam, who was an individual who stood for what he believed.
Defender of Aqidah Khatm Nabuwat, as you mentioned earlier, an individual who upheld the honor and the dignity of Tajdar Madina Rasul Akram Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his noble companions, Ashabi Rasul and Ali Rasul, the esteemed household of Rasul Akram Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They had the affiliation and nisbat to the Awliya Kamilin. No doubt he himself was Naqshbandi in Silsila. The Bayt was with Pir Sahib, Haji Pir Sahib of Gulhar Sharif. Yes, if I'm not mistaken. And in terms of Nisbatan, they had the laqab of Ridhwi at the end, which was the Nisbat with Sayyidi Ala Hazrat Imam Ahl Sunnat. Again, a point that we were mentioning earlier, that all the revolutionaries in the last 50 to 100 years, their root stems from Sayyidi Ala Hazrat Imam Ahl Sunnat. Imam Ahmad Riza Khan alayhi rahmat wa ridwan. So Sayyidi Ala Hazrat no doubt laid the foundations for these great scholars like Muhaddis Azam Pakistan, Hazrat Ata Muhammad Bandi Alvi, our Grand Sheikh Hazrat Faqihul Asr, Allama Fazle Subhan, Hafizahullah Ta'ala. The father was a direct Khalifa of Sayyidi Ala Hazrat Mufti Shaista Gul, Rahmatullah alayhi, if I'm not mistaken. So Ala Hazrat we owe a lot to. He is our history. He is our pole, our lead in the Indian
Our past,
subcontinent,
present, and future,
without doubt. So Amir al-Mujahideen, as we were saying, born in Attak, Punjab, Pakistan, on the 22nd of May, 1966.
Wow, so he was only 55 years old.
And again, not making any comparison, but Dad, I think, was born in 1968.
68.
So in that sense, and Dad passed away 2 years ago, 3 years this year.
3 years.
So, Allama, they would have been the same age?
No, a couple of years younger.
Couple of years younger, Dad would have been. But I was surprised when you said Allama Shafiur Qadri Sahib rahmatullah, they were only 55 when they passed away.
Yeah, 1930 to 1985.
And that's 85.
1985 he passed away, yeah.
Wow.
You didn't know that?
No, I thought they would have gone to the late 80s, early 90s. But, 85.
No, they didn't even see the 90s, man.
Allahu Akbar.
But Allama Khadim Hussain Ridhwi, I mean, we're talking about somebody who, in the last 5-6 years, who's shocked the world. He's shocked the world
or shook the world.
Yeah.
To its core, such that...
Shook and shocked, yeah.
Yeah. So...
I think we're both hungry.
No, I don't think it's the hunger. I think power cut. You've had a bit of a...
Me, the Marie, yeah.
Yeah.
Tuzoi.
But we will conclude, inshallah.
But what a janaza, no? Shall we just conclude on his janaza? Look at the I mean,
the
just
biggest...
going to get it on probably the...
Al-Vida, 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 Naam-se risalat ke pehredar, Al-Vida, khatm nubuwat ke alamdar.
Back as that, really, to be honest, and it's a testimony to their greatness. Muhammad Ali had a great janaza, hundreds and thousands.
Sheikh Hamza Yusuf spoke and Imam Zad Shakir on his janaza.
On his janaza,
yeah. Speeches,
Muhammad Ali's, yeah.
I'm not sure about Malcolm X. Can you
Well,
shed
he was
any light?
assassinated.
Yeah, he was assassinated.
But the janaza.
There are pictures of the
Okay.
coffin and stuff, and it was more of like...
Huzur
I
Taj
read
Sharia, we
once
saw
about
this.
it.
Again, India's subcontinent. We don't have to
Oh,
restrict
we've
it
not
to
even
Pakistan.
mentioned Mufti Azim Hind,
Yeah,
Mullah Mustafa Raza,
over 2 million attended their janaza, if I'm not mistaken.
Rahmatullah alayhi.
But different time periods have obviously different dynamics. We're in the age of the social media.
So it's bigger, it contributes towards,
Yeah.
it contributes towards like numbers. I mean, if you're famous on social media, you're gonna get people turning out. People will know you
No,
more.
but I think Allama Khadim Hussain Ridhwi Sahib rahmatullah alayhi, it wasn't really he wanted that fame
No, I don't think he
or
would.
he desired that. It was he genuinely had pure, unconditional devotion and love for the Prophet sallallahu
and
alaihi
this
wasallam.
cause, this mission.
And this cause and mission, which he, despite his illness, despite his,
He risked it
ma'zuri,
all.
he traveled from one part of the mulk of Pakistan, from one part of the country to the other, despite these challenges and difficulties.
And he had his own political movement, his group called Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan,
Yeah.
TLP, which actually did well in the last elections. People were awoken,
And there were a lot of, obviously, what's the word?
rigging
Yeah.
involved in the ballot count in relation to.
But
the
he's an
voting.
individual who, in our lifetime, has rejuvenated and revived
And realigned.
and revolutionized
Brought us back to
us all with Muhabbat Rasul, Ishq Mustafa
what's your
sallallahu alaihi wasallam,
purpose?
and what's our objective in life, and in jana, in mana, na rakha ghair se kaam, lillahi alhamd, magar
Dunya-
agar se.
Dunya se Musliman.
So that slogan, labbaik, labbaik, labbaik ya Rasulallah, tajdare khatm nabuwat, zindabad, zindabad. So these are those
Slogans which were said to awaken and remind people that we will not tolerate anyone who dishonors, disrespects the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and likewise we will not accept and this concept of another Prophet after Rasulullah. This is not going to happen.
No.
And we will stand and be vocal on this, because if we don't, we will lose the core tenets of our faith.
And what's left then?
Then it's diluted, and
Yeah.
and Allah Almighty will never allow that to happen.
No.
And He will always send men like Maulana Khadim Hussain Ridhwi, and people who will champion this cause and who will raise their voice and defend these principles of Islam. And that's the job of a revolutionary.
And I think only hypocrites, those who have no real nisbat to the deen, can attack a true revolutionary.
Well, for those who don't, they will say this is a hardline approach. This is staunch.
No, you didn't listen to my full. I didn't say to just Amirul Mujahideen.
Yeah, no, generally.
To all revolutionaries.
Yeah, but they'll say that. But they'll say Malcolm X was hardline.
They do say he still is.
He's a hardline. He was pro black.
Yeah.
He's hardline. But what we have to understand is sometimes you have to be hard in order for it to be known.
Or to
if
be
you
heard
take,
even.
if you go down the softer approach, you get washed within the system. You've got to stand out of that system, and you've got Abdul Hamid Kishk and the likes of these individuals who spoke out, who raised their voice. And Maulana Khadim Hussain Ridhwi was no different. He was a man who was heard, who was known, who was seen. And he anyone who has true Iman inside his heart and believes in the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and Allah Almighty will be deeply saddened with his departure. Why? Because you have to accept that he stood for the correct and true principles. It wasn't about his pockets. It wasn't about him. His legacy was put the Prophet ﷺ first, his honor and his defense first, and then it'll be right. And to conclude, legacy. What is his legacy in a few words, Imam Adil? Tell us.
Again, revolutionized, rejuvenated, rewoken, a sleeping
nation,
youth in Mulk Pakistan. You've got to look at his janazah. 90% of those who attended were youngsters. Again, mainly aerial views of what we were seeing, but 90% of those who attended were youngsters. So he's an individual who his legacy is being felt. The effects are being felt now, and this certainly will continue to be felt for the foreseeable future. It's our duty and our responsibility as adherents to their mission to continue that mission and to instill the love of the Prophet ﷺ within our hearts, first and foremost, and the importance of defending his honor, not just through a status on Facebook or a post or tweet on Twitter, but rather become those people, as Hafizah mentioned earlier, like Muhammad Ali, who don't just talk the talk, but walk the walk, who put their money where their mouth is, a figure of speech. And we've got to be willing to do that. And the least we should be willing to do is sit and talk about these great men of Allah. And again, Mubarakbad to Hafiz Sahib, Didi, and obviously to Imam Sahib. I think it's been really well received. I think for the last 2 hours, we've done well, and time has passed. So
and it's fitting that, Imam Adil, you actually, dare I say this, is you represent and you are of that thought where, you will not mince your words. You will always say the truth, speak the truth, though it's sour. And
we live by the Hadith Sharif, قُلِ الْحَقَّ وَإِنْ كَانَ مُرًّا, that speak the truth even if it is bitter or sour. And the reality is that
bitter truth is always going to be have that effect. And from a personal perspective, as a younger brother, you've always said it as it is. There is no grey area with you. You are quite black and white.
Aapki muhabbat, but again, with Amirul Mujahideen, the greatness of an individual is truly understood when even his enemies acknowledge that.
Wow. And the people he spoke out against.
Imran Khan, one of the first to tweet condolences regarding Amirul Mujahideen. Deobandis, I don't want to take their names on my tongue, but we know who they are. Others, Ali Hadith, we saw, what was his name?
Ehsan Ilahi Zahir's,
that's the one. We saw TQ come out and Minajul Quran. They obviously posted a tweet.
Tahirul Qadri.
Yes, they posted a tweet as well. So again, an individual,
a person who and Allama Sahib spoke against them because they were not speaking or vocal for this true mission.
Hate the sin, not the sin. I think that was the motto and what they lived by.
And in the end, this is what I'm saying. They even know deep down that you have to salute this guy. He risked everything to speak.
Even Donald Trump tweeted for Muhammad Ali on that point when he passed away. Donald Trump, who's the staunchest opposition.
You've said it 4 times now, Afsab.
Did I get that
Donald.
I can't. I'm tired, hungry.
I think we're all
Let's go.
reserved.
Guys, this has been a fantastic podcast.
Yeah.
It has been amazing to have Imam Adil on. As always, having Didi on, myself. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let's Talk with Imah is the channel. We want to move everything onto there. Subscribe to this YouTube channel, Al Hikam Media. You can watch all the Jummah lectures and every other talk as well. And tomorrow night, we will be doing another podcast. And this one is going to be a tribute to Diego Armando Maradona. Now, people might say, oh, you're an Imam. Why are you doing this? Blah, blah, blah. Actually, if you know me as a person, you'll know I'm a big fan of football. I play football. I watch football. Football's been a big part of my childhood and even my youth. And even now, I'm an avid supporter of football. Imam Adil, you'd be surprised. Sports, the Red Devils.
I've got a few trophies at home. You'll be surprised. My cousin, mashallah, our cousin, Kabir, was in his 5-a-side football team at Five Alive a few years ago. We're going back well before Jamia days.
We're a sporting family.
We like sports, whether it's UFC, whether it's boxing, whether it's cricket, whether it's football, and we can talk on basketball. We can talk about all these all night. But tomorrow we will be talking about Diego Armando Maradona, one of the greatest footballers to ever have kicked a ball. And, we're going to be joined by my friend, a dear brother, Ibrahim Hussain, who, to be honest with you, because of him, I really knew who Diego was. He has all the Diego shirts. He'll be wearing it tomorrow.
He has a big as well, innit?
He keeps hair like him as well. If you look at him on some days, he looks like Diego as well. I won't say he plays like Diego. He says
AKA Pav, for those of you who might know.
I doubt anyone knows because it's quite a diverse community watching us. But he will be on tomorrow and we will be talking and interrogating him and watching some clips of Maradona. So this podcast, Let's Talk with Imah, is religious, it's scientific, it's everything. Deen, dunya. I mean, Imam Adil quite well pointed that out yesterday, that you are representing both aspects, Deen and dunya. So please do not go away and say that, Imam Asim's an Imam and he's talking about... No, we're going to talk about everything. Things that are relevant, current,
social
trending,
issues.
Social topics. There are going to be some really good topics. Marriage is one that a lot of people have asked, and that is going to be one huge one. We're going to have a few podcasts on marriage, mental health,
the futures of masajid
and madaris, and so many. There's loads of topics.
Yeah.
So guys, subscribe, and inshallah, I hope you will join us again tomorrow night. It's going to be good. Those of you who don't know who Maradona is, you better go check it out. Those of you do, you're going to tune in, and we will see you tomorrow night, 9 p.m. on the same channel, same time. Let's Talk with Imah. Allah bless you.